Hi everyone, how are you? So, this is the second video of unit number 6, and this unit is all about energy. For this lesson in particular, we're going to be talking about ways of describing the weather and how to make comparisons. So, those are the two goals of this lesson. So, first, what I want you to do is to have a look at these images in which we have important vocabulary about the weather. Pay close attention to each of them. A, B, C, right? D, E, F, and G. Because we're going to read now a fact file about important facts regarding the weather in different countries, right? So what I want you to do, and I'm going to make the image a bit smaller, I want you to read this fact file and try to match the concepts with the images that we have there, right? So I'm going to read everything for you because this is a bit small, and then you're going to try to match the highlighted concepts with the images. So let's start reading. It says fact file weather. A thunderstorm can have as much energy as 4 days' use of electricity for the whole United States. A lightning bolt heats the air to about 30,000 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than the surface of the sun. The tallest clouds are cumulonimbus clouds. From bottom to top, they can be up to 18 kilometers high. In 1979, a rainbow in North Wales lasted for 3 hours. The heaviest rain was on the island of Reunion in the Indian Ocean, 1,825 millimeters in 24 hours. The fastest winds on Earth are inside a tornado. The wind speed inside one tornado in Oklahoma, USA, was more than 880 kilometers per hour. The world's largest snowflake fell in 1887. It was 38 centimeters across. The coldest temperature ever recorded was minus 89.2 degrees Celsius at the Vostok station in the Antarctic. Large hailstones fall at speeds faster than 250 kilometers per hour. The heaviest hailstone fell in Bangladesh in 1986. It weighed 1 kilogram and was as large as a melon. Interesting, right? So we don't have as extreme of a weather here in Chile, so it's important to learn about facts in other countries. Now let's try to match. First we have the word thunderstorm. What image represents the thunderstorm? That would be C, right? Which is a more general picture. Letter C. A lightning bolt would be letter D, right? Just the lightning bolt, and in general, that is called a thunderstorm with sounds and light, right? Clouds, we have them in G, right? A rainbow here in E. A tornado, letter B. Snowflake, that is A, right? A very beautiful snowflake. And we have the hailstones here. Interesting, right? Now, here we have some of the concepts we can use to talk about weather, but we also have other expressions. And it's important for you to understand that we not only use nouns, as in this case, to talk about the weather, but we can also use verbs and adjectives as well. So I'm going to try to make a list here of different nouns, right? Verbs and adjectives that we can use to talk about the weather. So for example, we have the noun rain, which is something very common when we talk about the weather, right? A verb would be it rains because that can also be used as a verb. And when we talk about adjectives, we can say that the weather is rainy or the day is rainy or wet as well. For snow, something similar happened, right? Because we can also say that it snows or it is snowing. when it is snowing, you say that the day is snowy, right? Then we have wind, a windy day, sun, like days in summer are very sunny, right? And fog, which in Spanish means niebla, right? So we say foggy. Yes? We don't use either wind, sound, or fog as a verb, but we can use it as adjectives as well, right? Now let's continue. We're going to do a listening now. We're going to listen to different people talking about the weather. We have Jivan from Kolkata here, and we have Vasily from Moscow. So, listen to Jivan and Vasily talking about the weather where they live. What kinds of weather do they talk about? Here you can say if it is a tropical weather or maybe cold or hot. And who talks about these specific things? So try to pay attention to more detail. Afternoons, driving, air conditioning, clothes, drinks, temperature, and tourists. So after you listen, you can say, okay, Jivan talked about afternoon, clothes, and temperature, and Vasily talked about driving, temperature, and tourists, as an example. All right, so let's try to identify the things they talk about, the topics they talk about. So let's listen.
Track 13.
Jivan. The summer months in India can actually be quite dangerous. It's so hot before the rains come. The most important thing is to drink a lot, to cover up when you go outside, to cover your head. You'll see Indian men and women wearing long clothes which cover everything, including their arms and legs. Only tourists wear shorts and t-shirts in the hot sun. On summer afternoons in Calcutta, where I live, the streets are empty because it's too hot to go out. So most people are either at work or at home asleep. A lot of people use air conditioning, but it's expensive. Not everyone can afford it. Cold drinks like mango panna are really popular. This is a drink made from unripe mangoes. It really helps to cool your body.
Vasily. I live in Moscow, in Russia. Our winters last from about November to March, and we get quite a lot of snow. In January and February, it's usually -5 to -10 degrees Celsius, but it can get a lot colder, even down to -30. Okay, maybe it isn't as cold as Siberia, but it's cold enough. You have to wear lots of big, heavy clothes and boots, and everything takes longer. Putting clothes on to go out, taking them off when you get inside, and you have to be more careful on the roads too, because they can be icy. Everyone has to carry an emergency kit in the car, so if the car stops, you'll be okay. These days, a lot of young people prefer to escape the winter and go to much hotter countries like Egypt and Turkey. But most people I know spend half the winter at home watching TV. Me, I like to get out of the city and go skiing. But I think we all look forward to the New Year celebrations, which are really fun and help us to get through our long winters.
Okay, so remember that if you need to listen again, you can pause the video and go back, all right? So, first we have Jivan talking, and he talked about hot weather in India, right? The hot weather. Whereas Vasily, right, he talked about cold weather. Yes, the opposite poles. Now, Jivan talked about afternoons, right? He also mentioned something about air conditioning, the clothes that people wear, special drinks, right? The temperatures of its city, and he also talked about what the tourists like to do. On the other hand, Vasily talked about driving, how driving was very difficult in icy days, right? He also mentioned something about clothes that people wear in the winter, right? He talked about temperature, and he also mentioned that tourists like to escape the country and go to more hotter countries, right? Like Egypt. Now, what I want you to do is to try to remember what are the things that they said about each specific topic they talked about, right? We're going to listen again, and the idea is for you to try to catch more complete sentences, all right? So please pause the video now, go back, listen the text, and try to gather as much information as you can from each topic. All right? I'm going to be waiting for you. Are you ready? So let's see. We're going to start with Jivan first. So when he talked about afternoons, he said that on summer afternoons, the streets are empty. People don't go out, right? Then he says that not everyone can afford air conditioning because air conditioning is very expensive, right? When he talked about clothes, he said that Indian men and women wear long clothes to cover their bodies. He also said that it's important to drink a lot to stay hydrated, right? He said that the temperature in the summer can be dangerous and that tourists wear shorts and shirts, different from local people, right? Very good. Now, Vasily, when he talked about driving, he said that you have to be more careful on the roads because they are icy, right? And you have to carry an emergency kit in the car. He also said that everyone has to carry, that you have to wear lots of big and heavy clothes to stay warm. In terms of temperature, he says that it's usually -5 to -10 degrees, but it can get a lot colder, even down to -30. Imagine being in a country where there are temperatures of -30. Here in Chile, when we have like 0 degrees Celsius, we are freezing. So that can be very difficult, right? And in terms of tourists, he said that people like to visit other countries which have a more hot weather at the time, right? He prefers to stay at home and watch some TV, right? Now, what do you do, when the weather is really hot or cold? What activities do you like to do in hot or cold weather? Usually in the summer, people like to go to pools, right? Or maybe do outside activities like if you have some shadow, maybe, right? Go to the beach. But when it's very cold, well, there are some people that like to go out. I prefer to stay at home, actually. Now, do you like this kind of weather? What do you prefer? Do you prefer hot weather or cold weather? Do you enjoy summer? Well, here in Chile, sometimes temperatures can get really high and that can be suffocating sometimes, right? Now, we can talk about this when we see each other in the next online lesson. Now, let's continue. So, now we're going to move on to talk a bit about grammar. The grammar point of this unit is how to compare things. And we're going to be studying old ways of comparing things, but also some maybe new expressions that you can use. Now, what are the comparatives and superlatives of the adjectives in the table? So we have here some classification. So we have one syllable adjectives, two syllable adjectives that end in Y, adjectives with two or more syllables, and adjectives that are irregular when we talk about comparatives as superlatives, right? So we know that there are certain rules for each of these adjectives, but try to go back to what you already know and try to make a list of all the comparatives and superlative forms that you know. So let's see. Here we have cold and the colder, and the coldest. Then we have hotter and the hottest. Hottest, right? Larger and the largest. Heavier and the heaviest. More careful and the most careful. More important, the most important. And then we have irregulars, which are better and the best, worse and the worst. And we have further and the furthest. The farthest. There we have it, right? So these are the answers. Now let's go to talk a bit about the rules. So we have basic rules, right? So for one syllable adjectives like cold, hot, and large, for comparatives, we add er at the end, and for superlatives, we use the at the beginning of all superlatives and then est at the end. So colder, hotter, larger, the hottest, the largest, the heaviest, right? Now pay attention to the case of hot. What do we have to double that consonant? That is because the word hot ends in consonant, vowel, and consonant. When we have that combination of letters, we're going to double the consonant, the last one. So, right, if you pay attention here, we have vowel, consonant, 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 vowel, right? So in only the cases of consonant, vowel, and consonant, we're going to double the last one. Yes? Only in those cases. Now, for adjectives with two syllables ending in y, we're going to consider them as short adjectives. So we're going to use the same rule, but instead of using the y, we're going to use an I, right? Heavier and the heaviest. So these follow the same category, these two, the same rule. Now for adjectives with two or more syllables, like careful and important, we're not going to add the er at the end, right? We're not going to say careful there, but we're going to add the word more as a comparison and the most for superlatives. In Spanish, it would be something like el más, right? The most. That is why we use the article the. Recuerden que este artículo es un artículo definido, ¿cierto? Entonces, cuando hablamos de superlativos, siempre hablamos de que hay uno que es más que el resto, ya que está definido. Hay un solo most careful people in the world, right? So that is why we use the article the. And then for irregulars, that is just memory. These are the most common ones, right? And the ones that you have to learn. Good, better, the best, worse, the worst, and further and the farthest, right? So these are the normal adjective without conjugation, and these are the comparatives and superlative forms, all right? So can you give me more examples of these three categories? Can you think of more short adjectives, adjectives with two syllables ending in y, adjectives with two or more syllables? Take a couple of minutes and maybe pause the video if you want to try to think of more examples for each category. So let's see. In the first case, for one syllable adjectives, we can also have words such as maybe small, quick, slow, nice, right? For two syllables ending in Y, we have words such as early or easy. And for this one, we have a lot of more examples, right? We can say comfortable, maybe interesting, useful, beautiful, and so on and so forth, right? Make sure you learn the rules very good. Now, let's try to move this. I'm going to close it. Yes, 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 and yes. Let's do activity B now. It says use words from 1A, so these adjectives, to complete the sentences from the text and the fact file. So this is information that we already listened or learned, right? So try to choose the correct adjectives to complete this. Here with comparatives and superlatives, and here with the comparison as. You can go back to the listening or the reading if you want, so we can have a look at the answers. So let's check. For the first one, you have to be more careful on the roads. That is what Vasily said, right? You have to be more careful on the roads. Careful, long adjective, so we use more, right? That's harder than the surface of the sun. That's harder than. When we have the word than, we immediately know that we're talking about a comparative and not a superlative, right? The, so this is a clue. This tells us that we are talking about superlatives, right? The heaviest hailstone fell in Bangladesh in 1986. And we have the last one. The most important thing is to drink a lot. Now, this is a new structure. So we're going to complete and then we're going to be talking about the rules and how we can use it. So it says, it weighed 1 kilogram and was as large as a melon. It isn't as cold as Siberia. Now, maybe you're asking me, how can I use as and what's the difference, right? So, when we have a comparison with this structure, we are not going to be using comparatives and superlatives, but we're going to use the adjectives in its infinitive form without conjugation. So, for example, I'm going to say, this is, vamos a usar el verbo to be in this case, right? This is or was as large as a melon, as careful as you can be, as important as, and then we're also comparing things, but when we use as in positive, we're saying that two things are similar, right? So, for example, I can say, I am as tall as my sister. So that means that we are both the same height. Yes? Both the same height. I am as tall as my sister. Right? I'm comparing two things that result in the same thing. But we can also use it in negative. So I can say it isn't as cold as Siberia. Here we're talking about Kolkata, right? Kolkata, I'm sorry, in India. So we say India isn't as cold as Siberia. So that means that Siberia is colder than India. Now, I'm going to attempt to do a drawing for you, so please don't laugh. I'm going to make my best effort to really show you how you can use this new structure. So let's see. Here we have 1, 2, 3, and let's see, 4. So we're going to call this the building A, B, C, and D. And we're going to make sentences using all the comparative forms that we can use. So let's start with A. What we can say about building A? We can say that A is taller than B, right? A is taller than B. Yes? So B is smaller than A, right? Both mean the same, but using a different adjectives, right? Now, we can also say that B isn't as tall as A. B isn't or is not as tall as A. In this case, we don't say taller, like here. We say just tall as. Yes? Or we can also say A isn't as small as B. Right? Now, C is the tallest, right? Here we can go back and we can say B is the smallest of all 4, right? We're comparing to a big group, so we're saying that C is the tallest of the group and B is the smallest of the group, right? And now for D, if you pay attention, D is the same height as A. So we say D is as tall as A, which means they are the same, right? So when we use it in affirmative, is, we talk about something being the same. And in this case, we talk about something being different. Yes? So I hope that this is clear. I'm going to leave a PowerPoint presentation and more videos maybe about this if I can find one that is good enough. But that is the idea. So when we use as, we can use it in positive or in negative. But the important thing is that we're going to use the adjective as it is. We're not going to use the comparative or superlative form. Yes? Now, look at these sentences. So here we have 5 different sentences, and what I want you to do is to be able to identify if the expression means that there is a big difference, a small difference, or if they are exactly the same thing. Right? So please take a couple of seconds or minutes, pause the video if you want. Take your time to do this exercise. Now let's see. Number 1 says, it's usually -5 to -10, but it can get a lot colder. So that is a lot colder, a big difference. A lot colder, that means a big difference, right? Number 2, people prefer to go to much hotter countries. Much hotter countries, that is also a big difference. A big difference, right? Number 3, you should be a bit more careful in the hot sun. A bit more careful, that is a small difference, right? A bit more careful. Moscow is almost as cold as Siberia. So almost means that it's nearly the same, but not exactly. So there is a small difference, right? Almost as cold, casi tan frío como Siberia, right? Almost. A small difference, a very, very small difference. And then we have Helsinki is just as cold as Moscow. That is exactly the same. Just as cold as Moscow. Right? So I'm going to try to draw something here. Maybe right. So when we talk about difference, something that is different, we can say much, a lot, or a bit, right? And then we have colder than, right? Because we're going to make a comparison for things that are different. So much colder than, a lot colder than, or a bit colder than, right? Now, when we talk about things that are the same, right? Different, so the same, we can say nearly, almost, and just. And in this case, we're not going to use comparatives, right? We're going to say as cold as something. So nearly as cold as something, almost as cold, or just as cold. And that would be that something is more similar or the same. All right? Now, let's continue. We have more exercises. So please use up your energy, right? Because we're going to be continuing with the exercises. I have to make this a bit smaller. So let's see. There we have it. Now, complete the paragraphs about Pakistan using these adjectives. I'm sorry, but this is kind of bothering me. Yes. Using the adjectives in the correct form. So you can use it in comparatives, superlatives, right? You decide. So pause the video now and try to complete the text. Look at the image for some reference, right? Because I'm going to be giving you the answers now. Are you ready? So let's see. We have, I'm going to read and you're going to complete because that is going to be a bit difficult for me. Now, when I was little, I lived in Lahore in Pakistan. It's the second largest city in Pakistan after Karachi. The weather in Lahore is extreme during the summer. The hottest months are May, June, and July, when temperatures can rise to 40 to 45 degrees. The heaviest rainfall is in July and August during the monsoon. The coldest months are December, January, and February, but it doesn't often get colder than 99 degrees. What I remember most clearly is the hail. Hailstones almost as big as tennis balls would hit our house. They could break windows and damage cars. However, the most frightening moments were the dust storms when the sky turned black in the middle of the day. The most frightening, right? Frightening means scary. Now, we're going to go to page 136 to do more exercises. Okay, there we are. So, here we have the explanations again. So if you want to have a look at it, right? Comparisons. So here, look at the images. We say Monday was sunnier than Tuesday, right? If you look at the images. Thursday weather was much cooler than Monday's because in Thursday it was raining, right? For superlative, we can say Monday's weather was the hottest and the sunniest. Hottest, and sunniest. Thursday's was the coldest and wettest. Tuesday was as warm as Wednesday because they have the same temperature. Tuesday wasn't as warm as Monday, right? Because Monday was warmer. So pay attention to the adjective that you're using. Now here we have the spelling rules I told you, right? For one syllable adjectives, ending in vowel and consonant, we double it. 2 syllables ending in Y, and 3 syllables and more. Then we have the irregulars, pronunciation, right? And then we move on to the exercises. So, the first exercise here says complete the sentences with the correct form of the adjectives in brackets. So please pause the video and try to complete the exercise. So are you ready? Let's see. It's much wetter. Remember that here we double the word, right? It's much wetter in the north of the country than in the south. He is the most relaxed person I know. The most relaxed person I know. Amy is much happier now than she was in the past, right? Janie is as good at her job as Matt is, right? So remember, we're using as and as, so we use the adjective as it is. He's much more energetic than I am. More energetic than I am. That's the worst meal I've ever had here. This report isn't as interesting as the last one. Is this the best hotel you could find? Very good. Now, for the last exercise, you're going to put the words in orders to make sentences, right? So please pause again this video and do the exercise. Are you ready? So let's check your answers. I'm going to be reading and not typing because I take so much time doing that. So, number 1, we have running the marathon is the most difficult thing I've ever done. Running the marathon is the most difficult thing I've ever done. Number 2, I'm usually more cheerful when it's sunny. I'm usually more cheerful when it's sunny. Getting a bus is as easy as getting a taxi. Getting a bus is as easy as getting a taxi. 4. I think frozen vegetables are as good as fresh ones. I think frozen vegetables are as good as fresh ones, which is a complete lie. 5. My brother is the most intelligent person I know. My brother is the most intelligent person I know. 6. Organized holidays are the worst way to travel. Organized holidays are the worst way to travel. 7. Doing exercise is a healthier way to get fit than dying. Doing exercise is a healthier way to get fit than dieting. And the last one says, this summer isn't as nice as last summer. This summer isn't as nice as last summer. Very good. So that would be the end of today's lesson because this video is very, very long. So remember that if you have questions, you can contact me at my email. And we're going to be talking a bit about this in our next session as well, because I know this is a topic that is more difficult. All right? So please take care and stay home if you can't. I will see you very soon. Bye bye.